The charges against former FBI Director James Comey put the Department of Justice in uncharted territory. As one former department official puts it, quote, "What we are seeing is the almost wholesale collapse of the Justice Department as an organization based in the rule of law." Joining us now, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General during the George W. Bush administration, Tom Dupree, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin still with us as well. So, Tom, tell me, do you think that quote is overblown?
Well, I think there is a serious threat to the rule of law in the sense that what we've been seeing, certainly in the last few days, is a sharp departure from the way the Justice Department has historically operated. Certainly today's Justice Department bears little resemblance in many respects to the Justice Department in which I served. And I think what we're seeing here now with the Comey indictment is frankly similar to what we've seen since the start of the new administration, in that we've seen the president express very strong preferences for the way particular law enforcement decisions should be made, dictating outcomes, and replacing personnel, career personnel, long-serving, experienced prosecutors who bring their own independent judgment to bear, reach a conclusion different from the president's, and as a result are removed, and the president installs someone who will enforce the law, at least the way he sees it.
So there was, the last time that I can remember this happening in a big and organized way, or attempting this to happen, it was what's it called? The Saturday Night Massacre, excuse me. And it didn't work. It didn't go very far down the line. Do you expect to see something similar this time? I mean, you had one U.S. attorney already resign. You've had some people in the office resign. But is it your expectation, Tom, that this is going to result in a number of other resignations from people in the department who don't want to get into politics?
Well, certainly in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Virginia, and the spotlight is on that office today, I think they are going to have a challenge trying to find people to actually try this case. We saw what, in my experience, is very unusual, which is to have the sitting United States attorney go in, present the case to the grand jury. Her name was the only one when we got the indictment returned. Very, very unusual. And so I think right now there is probably a series of meetings in that office saying, who's going to try this case? And they may be going down the line. So it would not surprise me at all if we did see additional resignations in that office in the days to come.
And if that happens, what is U.S. Attorney Halligan going to do, Lisa? Or what can she do?
Well, I think, Katie, she has the option of bringing in detailees, people who are U.S. attorneys, or assistant U.S. attorneys and other offices to work on her case. The beauty and also the danger of the Justice Department is, as Tom knows, there is a lot of ideological diversity among line assistants. So can Lindsay Halligan find people who think that this case against Jim Comey is just and might want to partake in it from other areas of the country? She probably can. Are there people who would risk their reputation and even their law licenses to try this case? There probably are. And so even if they are not currently assistant U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, she can find people who might want to be a part of this, including her now first assistant, Maggie Cleary, who was an assistant in the Western District of Virginia and then held other positions in the administration, got brought back to this office to perhaps try and shore up the number of people in the line who are willing and able to try this case.
Tom, how much faith do you have in the legal process after this, in the court system? Do you think this goes to trial?
I think there's a much higher chance that this case does not go to trial than a typical criminal indictment. And that's for the simple reason that normally, before prosecutors charge, they really kick the tires on a case. They make sure the evidence is sufficient. That's required as a matter of DOJ policy, that you can't bring a case that you don't really have confidence in. But I'm not entirely sure that process was followed here. So for that reason, yeah, I do think there's a reasonable chance this thing gets knocked out before it goes to trial. With regard to the system as a whole, look, I think the next few weeks, the next few months are going to provide really an acid test for the system. There are other actors in this who play a very significant role, including the federal judge who will be overseeing the case, and of course the jurors, assuming a jury is ultimately convened to hear these charges. So it's not just the Justice Department prosecutors who are going to be dictating events. There are going to be other actors, independent actors, other branches of our government that will have their say before any conviction or any verdict can be returned.
There are a lot of people who are saying this is crossing the Rubicon. If you couple this with all of the other moves that Donald Trump is making, I'm wondering, Tom, just to get your gut on where we stand.
Look, I mean, there have been a number of potential Rubicon crossings in the last few months. I'm not sure that this is a, particularly dramatic departure from other breaks from the norm that we've seen in the past. I do think that last night's indictment, in all likelihood, is a bellwether of what's to come. Look, the president has made no secret about this. That's one thing you can say about last night's indictment. It wasn't particularly surprising. The president has said from day one, he said on the campaign trail, he wanted to go after his political opponents, and that's what he's been doing. So it would not surprise me at all if the Comey indictment is chapter 1 in what could be a longer book where Trump and the Justice Department do bring charges against his other opponents, many of whom he's already identified by name.
Tom Dupree, really good to have you. Lisa, always good to have you.